It's David Lorimer, the Program Director of the Scientific and Medical Network, and I'm here with my old friend, Dr. Pim van Lommel, who's in Holland. I'm speaking from Scotland on this occasion, and this is one of a series of honorary member interviews, which I've been doing to commemorate our 50th anniversary, the Golden Jubilee of the network. So Pim, welcome.
Thank you very much for the kind invitation, David.
And I'm going to start with my first question, which is who or what inspired you in your line of work?
Well, as being in cardiology, I was privileged to meet people who survived a cardiac arrest and shared their near-death experience with me. And according to what I've learned in university and medical school, it should be impossible to have memories with cognition, with emotions, with the possibility of perception out and above the lifeless body at the moment. This cardiac arrest, there's no circulation, no breathing. Circulation to the brain has stopped. So that started for me with scientific curiosity.
Well, that's very important. But how did you become a cardiologist? Was there some doctors in your family, or?
There were doctors in my family, but no cardiologists. My father was a neurologist, first tuberculosis, but because it was ended tuberculosis, he changed at the age of 40 to neurology. And I had an aunt who was pharmacologist and another aunt chemistry, etc. So a lot of, and my grandfather was veterinary.
Okay, that's very interesting. So the neurology, of course, is something that would come into your work on NDEs at a later stage. So that was a useful background to have from your father.
Well, my father wasn't too much open to my research, and he died in '93, so he didn't.
Okay, so he was part of the mainstream, in other words.
I was a mainstream, old-fashioned cardiologist, but it changed because of the death experiences.
Absolutely. And what do you regard as your most significant contribution or contributions? Because you've really been a pioneer in the field, and I'd be interested in how you see that yourself.
Yeah, but it started for me in '86 when I read the book by George Ritchie, Return from Tomorrow, where he describes as a medical student who died in 1943 and a very extensive death experience. And that was the start for me to start asking patients who survived cardiac arrest in the past if they had memories from the period of unconsciousness. And the period of 2 years, from '86 to '88, from 50 patients, 12 shared the ND with me. And that's how it started. And then in '88, we started the IONS group in the Netherlands. And we started a prospective study in survivors of cardiac arrest, which took 4 years. And then a longitudinal study which took taped interviews 2 years and 8 years after the cardiac arrest. And then this study was published in The Lancet in 2001. And I published a book in 2009 in Holland. And then several scientific articles. And the latest articles is also important, I think, is from the essay contest from the Bigelow Institute of Consciousness Studies.
Yes, well, you were won second prize.
Yes, with the title Continuity of Consciousness.
So, I mean, our contact goes back to 1988, because I remember you came over to give a lecture on your preliminary findings.
That was in Oxford, together with Peter.
Together
with Peter Fennick.
Peter Fennick and John Tomlinson,
yes,
the late John Tomlinson.
That's how we met.
It's how we met, exactly. So that's 35 years ago. It's quite something, isn't it?
Yeah, interesting. And that's how it started to be in contact with you. That was Horizon in that time, I think.
Yes, well, it became the Horizon Foundation. We had an IANS as well. So we set that up with Margot Gray and Peter Fennick.
That's just how it started. Also, the book by Margaret Gray in the Netherlands as well. And
yes,
we had published the book Hole in One already.
That's right. Well, for me, that came out in 1990. I had a previous book called Survival, which came out in 1984.
Yeah.
So I think your scientific contribution and philosophical contribution to the field of NDEs is pretty unique, Pim, I think, and you've really committed yourself to finding the truth of what it really means for life, which I think personally is so important, because I think we can receive so much guidance from the experiences that people have.
That's especially the transformation. That's our longitudinal study, where we could prove that the transformation only happened with people who had an NDE, not produced by the cardiac arrest, but produced by the near-death experience. And that was statistically significant as well. The change, the three things is there's no fear of death anymore. New insight wasn't important in life. And the third is the enhanced intuitive sensitivity, where you always have to ask for, because people are reluctant to share it with you.
Yes, I mean, I think it's a transformative, it's a STE, isn't it? A spiritually transformative experience.
Exactly.
And that's really the message. And sometimes I think if all world leaders could have an NDE, that would transform the world, because they'd realized that they need to apply the golden rule.
Exactly. But I'm optimistic as well. I think the world is changing, but it is a slow process, and especially the younger generation is much more open.
Yes, well, that's good, and also from we're trying to encourage the younger scientists and doctors to look into these things.
I know,
but there's a lot of peer pressure to remain in the mainstream view. So Pim, I'm going to come to a broader question, which is about the evolution of consciousness studies and the relationship between science and spirituality. How do you see that evolving?
I'm positive as well. I think the Journal of Consciousness Studies about 20 years ago, about 70% of the articles was about the materialist approach of consciousness. And now it's about 30% materialistic approach and 70% post-materialist approach about consciousness studies. I think like the Galileo Commission and the post-materialist science group and the SMN, of course, is very important to change the world, to help the world to change their view about consciousness and the continuity of consciousness. So consciousness is eternal, no beginning, no end. And it's always there, beyond time, beyond space. And a lot of scientists, neuroscientists, philosophers are still very reluctant to, let's say, to believe it, because they lose their position at the university, they lose their research money, so they're silent about it. Private discussion, they can tell you, you could be right. Officially, they say it's total nonsense, but when they retire, they are more open. Say, well, I think it is different than I have told before.
So interesting, isn't it? It's peer pressure.
Exactly. It's awful. It's still awful. Yeah.
And it reminds me, in the 1980s and late 70s, I had a friend called Brigadier Michael Harbottle. And when he retired, he started Generals for Peace and Disarmament. And it's a similar situation, isn't it? That people can say much more what they think after they've retired than when they're still in post and subject to the kind of constraints that you've been talking about. But I think what is very interesting that you should make that observation about the Journal of Consciousness Studies, because I wasn't aware of that, and that's something significant in the broader field, isn't it?
I think so. I think it's very well. I published an article in it in 2013 about non-local consciousness. So I was invited to write an article. And I think it's important to this kind of journals to help them to change our views about consciousness.
Yes, and if you still got the 30% in there, then that keeps some readers in their comfort zone. Still, isn't it? And how do you see the importance of the SMN? You mentioned a little bit already.
I think it's a very important organization now, worldwide, open-minded scientists, medical people, but also philosophers, etc. It's a good network, and with the Paradigm Explorer, with the conferences they are organizing, you meet a lot of interesting and important people as well. I've been many times for conferences in the UK as well. And I love the people who are coming there. I think it's an open society, and it's doing, and you personally also doing a great job, David.
Well, thank you. And I particularly remember the dialogue you had with Eben Alexander, in 2018. And I've got a wonderful photo of you and him roaring with laughter about some insight that you'd shared.
Yeah.
And yes, thank you. I think that's obviously what we're trying to do. And of course the lockdowns and COVID have extended our reach enormously. And I noticed that the level of people who are coming to our monthly Galileo Commission meetings is really very, very high. A lot of professors and PhDs and doctors.
And what about the age? Older
Well,
people,
they're not people. We always have this debate about, we're going to die out if we, if we only recruiting people in their 70s and 80s. But my response to that is also one of Claudia Nielsen, one of our vice presidents. She said that people have time and inclination to join the SMN after their midlife crisis, and when they've got fewer family responsibilities and a bit more time. And so I know we won't be running out of people having midlife crises. So
even still younger.
Well, at the same time, we're doing a new initiative called the New Paradigm Navigators, and that's much more for young people, and so we are very active now in that domain too.
And I think the younger generation will look to internet interviews and not reading anymore. So I did I think about 20 Zoom interviews the last year from all over many countries. I think that's the modern way to approach the younger generation as well.
Yes, that's very true, and that's we were looking at the outreach of some of our steering group members like Vasilios Basios and Marjorie Willicott, and it's phenomenal what they've been doing over the last year.
Great. Yeah, Marjorie is great.
And then this is really a sort of $64,000 question, which is, what have been your most important lessons from life, personally and professionally?
I think what I've learned from the people with the near-death experience is the interconnectedness. We're all connected with each other. We're connected with nature, connected with the animals, with plants, connected with the planet Earth. Everything you do to other will return to yourself in positive and negative aspects as well. So I think it's important also professionally. It's about love, empathy, and compassion. I always tell people, first, have empathy and compassion towards yourself and accept your own negative aspects we all have. And then towards others, accept others as they were you as well. So the way we live, my wife is strict vegetarian. I am about strict vegetarian. At home we eat vegetarian. We are always in nature. Our home is silence, always silence. Not so many organ music as you have.
Yes.
We love silence, we love nature, we're always hiking and walking outside. And so it's about being close to nature, I think, and close to other people is so important.
Yes, I totally agree. You know, I could have said those words myself. and it's interesting that Evelyn Elsässer, for instance, and Ken Ring, they would say very much the same thing, I think. I think the community of near-death researchers have really understood this interconnectedness of consciousness, the golden rule, and John Audette is another example.
Exactly. Yeah, one of the people who started IONS in USA. Yeah,
and it comes back as you it comes back as you say to love, but also to wisdom. In my view, we're here to learn to love and to become a bit wiser than we were.
It's a total different insight. When I started as a young cardiologist, I wasn't interested at all in these things. But I changed. My wife changed. We changed. So we love our garden. We love the way where we live as well. We live very close to a natural park where we can walk and bike. Yeah.
And do you have, this is sort of extra question, as it were, but I'm wondering whether you have a favorite poet or nature text or something that you
I'm
keep
very
going
bad
back
at
to.
it. I'm very bad in quoting. You're wonderful in it. I'm very bad in it. I think Plato is for me very important, and Dante.
Okay,
Divine
Dante.
Comedy. I love Dante, and it's such an important book. I have many different editions from Dante as well.
That's wonderful. We've actually got a talk coming up on Dante at the beginning of October.
It was a kind of extensive near-death experience, what he describes, and I love also more the Bible and the Vedas and the Upanishads and then Tibetan Buddhism, etc. So my interest changed as well.
Well, thank you so much, Pim, for sharing your life and wisdom with us today.
You're welcome.